Hello and welcome to episode 3 for our mini series. And today we're going to talk about a message for self-care. My name is Mindy Dykes. I was introduced to the world of childhood cancer when my son was 6 weeks old and was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That is when I was introduced to Children's Cancer Research Fund, and I have been a community outreach coordinator with CCRF for over 8 years. And I get to meet amazing people in that profession and in that passionate work that I get to do. And today we are joined by a very good friend of mine that I made through Cancer Connection, Kim Buff. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Mindy. It's so great to be here with you today. It's always fun to see your shiny, smiling face. It brightens my day.
Thank you. You too. So Kim Buff is the founder and CCO of a nonprofit, Momcology, that's very near and dear to my heart, as well as CCRF, and we believe strongly in the mission and the work that Kim and her team and the community is doing. So I would love, Kim, if you could share a little bit about how you got here and your journey thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you, Mindy, and as you know, I am the mother of a childhood cancer survivor. My son, Matthew, was diagnosed with leukemia in 2009 when he was 8 years old. He is a thriving, almost 20-year-old now, and a young adult survivor of childhood cancer. But when he went through his treatment, we all certainly have different experiences leading into treatment, and mine happened to be one of isolation. We were new to the area when Matthew got diagnosed. We had recently moved to Minnesota. All of our family and most of our support system was still on the East Coast. So beyond going through his diagnosis, we really didn't have a strong support system in place. And it really wasn't until I started connecting with other mothers did that start to change. So kind of where Momcology started from was simply the need to connect with others, which is exceedingly difficult to do in the hospital when we're all wearing our armor of treatment. When there's HIPAA in place, it makes it very difficult. So I kind of made a promise to myself very early on when I was looking for connections to meet someone every time we were admitted into the hospital. And I always tell people it was kind of one of those times where I would walk around the floor, peek in rooms, say, hey, how's your son or daughter doing? Try to follow someone to the coffee pot and at least start a conversation. And it's kind of interesting because people that know me know that I'm fairly introverted, but I was that isolated and lonely that I changed into an extrovert in that hospital environment. So eventually started making connections. Like I said, it was life-changing for me. Started having get-togethers at my house with local moms in Minnesota, and mothers were driving 2 hours on a cold night just to be spending time together after the kids were tucked in bed. And we kind of thought to ourselves, how can we formulate a plan where everybody can feel what we're feeling in this room? And that's really where Momcology started, just trying to replace isolation with other people that understood. So here we are 9 years later, kind of hard to believe. Certainly, we're a national nonprofit organization, have reached over 9,000 families in 9 years for connection and peer support. We have programs running across the nation, in cities across the country, as well as within hospitals. And we really found that the growth of Momcology has simply come from other people referring other families when they meet them at the hospital, when they meet them out in other environments or online. They say, if you want to know where parents are talking to each other, they're talking to each other through Momcology. So that's kind of, in a short summary, kind of where we've come and the background of Momcology.
I still can't believe that 9 years have gone by. Like, that's just, it's amazing, and also heartbreaking to know that these this is still needed, and that these families are still, going through the depths of treatment. I love the visual of picturing this group of moms huddled down in your house and connecting, and that inspiration that you got from that this not only could, but this should be something more. Can you give me some ideas of, like, what were the things you saw, or what were the things you were feeling as you saw these families making these connections that kind of fueled that idea for you, or that passion?
I can think back to those days, and as hard as they were, and as hard as they were for everybody that was in that room for different reasons, there was laughter, there was joy, that we could take those flashing signs off the top of our heads that said, cancer, take them off, and really connect just about everyday life with the backdrop of cancer.
Sure.
We could talk about, the funny things that have occurred from it, the commonalities. And I think that when I look back at that time, those very, very early days, when this thought of, we know we have something special here, what can we do about it? What does that look like? I just remember being full of joy, being with these other women and exploring what this could potentially be. So
That's so amazing. That is so, and to me, as personally experienced childhood cancer, and been in those intimate moments with these other caregivers, I understand that. But I think anyone watching that is in that feeling of isolation would really be opening to welcome that concept that you can laugh, you can cry, you can feel joy, you can do all of those things in a safe space together.
right. And you can do them at the same time. It's not either or. It's not, I have to be sad, I have to be in pain, and I can't be in joy and hopeful at the same time. And I think that's something that we learn from each other, that you can have all of those emotions running parallel at the same time, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, it's a really useful tool for people to use that are experiencing any kind of crisis, and a coping mechanism. So a lot of programming, and I encourage everyone, and we'll have the link at the bottom to learn more about Momcology, and if you're looking for that place to connect. But there's been so much developed around self-care, and those kind of initial ideas of, like, we know you're feeling this range of emotions. So what are some of the most helpful self-care tips you think are useful for caregivers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really hard question, because self-care, and I know you know this, Mindy, is so personalized, right?
Mhm.
So something that may work for you may not work for me, right? Something that works for me may not work for somebody else. And I think, as a precursor to even self-care, I think we have to consider self-awareness, taking the opportunity to say, something doesn't feel right. I'm having negative feelings or negative emotions. Let's give those space. Let's understand them. And then from there, understand what are the things we can do to alleviate that stress, those other negative emotions for us, for individually us. Mindy, I know you very well. I know that the things that you might practice in self-care are things that might actually cause me anxiety, right? And vice versa.
Right. Right.
And that goes on, we talk about traditional self-care, and I know a lot of families kind of struggle with that idea and the definition, and I'm probably one of those too, the reluctant self-care type
Right.
of person.
Right.
But I think what I learned in time, both through myself, and again, I've been doing this for 9 years and have met a lot of families, been on a lot of self-care journeys with other moms and parents. But I kind of began to look at it, that self-care is an investment in personal well-being, right? More transactional. And that I could compute more
Right.
than I need to make a time for a massage or some deep breathing. Like, okay, if I don't take care of my body and I'm not listening to my body in the long term, that's not good for my personal well-being. And I'm not going to be able to accomplish all these things that I really want to.
Right.
And I've been in that pot where I've worn myself down to the bone. And again, through my child's cancer, through trying to build an organization to help people that are hurting, and to the point where I exhausted myself, and my body and mind paid for it. So when I began looking at self-care as not the need to go do something spa-like or luxurious, but to arrange my life in a way where my self-care could be an investment in my well-being, that's where it shifted for me.
I think that's amazing and fantastic. And I really, and thank you for sharing that with me. And I really appreciate what you said about the precursor of self-awareness, because I do agree there's that connotation, and it can, like, people can like literally like vomit at the thought of the word of like self-care. What
Right.
does that even mean?
I don't do that. I don't need that. There's
You
other
know,
more
I
important
don't even know
things.
what day it is. I'm trying to save my kid's life with this teen, like, and so
Right.
I really appreciate that concept of that pause of like just being aware of what's going on in your body, being aware of what's triggering reactions, what kind of reactions, and then slowly starting to figure out, because again, the last thing I want people to do is put another burden on the list of, this is something I have to do now to add
Right.
to my day. But you can start to make, slower changes, change your way of thinking about it. So it's just like everything else, we know that childhood cancer diagnosis comes and it's a freight train. You don't get to adjust slowly to it. There are things that you can, come up and take a breath for and start to figure out. And I think that it's awful when we burn ourselves out to the point that a lot of us are familiar with, and I know you are, but it's been beautiful to watch the transition of, and I can say that from knowing you, and I can say that from some of the other families too that we've worked with, that you can see it start to happening. And I think within Momcology, and I think you'd agree, Kim, is that you can see that transition start to happen. You can see when they start to find some more balance and peace, and it does create more functionality, right? Because these journeys, Matthew's treatment, how long was his treatment?
3.5 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And that's not including a relapse or all the things that could go wrong and change the whole course of protocol. That's a long time to be at it,
And it's a long time to potentially be ignoring your mind and your body and putting that last, which so many of us are used to doing and then to enhance that during a traumatic experience, which childhood cancer is for a parent,
right.
For the entire family. But as a parent, it's one of those bad things that you don't think can really happen. And when it does, it is traumatizing. And this is exactly what I did, is I didn't listen to my body's needs. I didn't listen to what my head was telling me. To neglect those feelings for that period of time cannot be good for one's well-being. And I had wished that I had the tools and the understanding and the education around how important it was for me to take care of myself. And it wasn't till many years after Matthew finished treatment and Momcology was well on its way and up and running, did it catch up with me. And boy, did it catch up with me hard. And one of the things that I've learned in that, and when I took care of a chronic disease, not taken care of, but I live with a chronic disease now that was eventually diagnosed, And even when I got it under control, I started to not focus on it again. And then boy, did it catch up with me again. So
in a much shorter span, right?
Right, right. So now part of my self-care plan is keeping my appointments that I make to take care of my health. So that keeping my appointments and showing up for them and making sure that I'm getting the care and treatment I need when I need it makes me feel good about myself.
Oh, I love that.
So that's not, your typical self-care of just taking a few moments to relax. But for me, it's like I said, a very transactional type of person, and that's how I see things in flow, that making time and me sticking to the appointments I make is part of my self-care.
I think that's fantastic. And I'm so glad that you're sharing that, because I really think there's a lot of inspiration in that, and that people can really connect to that. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for your journey and our friendship. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know what you wish that more people knew about childhood cancer.
Yeah. And again, that's a hard question, because it kind of depends which lens I'm looking through, depending on probably how I'm feeling or what project I'm working on. But clearly this is kind of about family support and self-care. So from that lens, I would answer that question is that I would want people to know that childhood cancer is a life-changing and life-defining moment, an experience that will last the trajectory of that parent's life. That it is an experience of trauma, and that doesn't mean that that person is encapsulated in that for that whole period of time, but it means that there's also an opportunity to live past that, and we call that post-traumatic growth, and bring positiveness in their lives through having that experience and being able to push it forward to others. But I think that a lot of times, and I hear this from a lot of parents, that others think once the last drop of chemotherapy goes through the IV, or the last pill is taken, or the last clear scan at a designated time after end of treatment, that things kind of disappear and everything's okay. But as a parent that has been through that experience of trying to save their child's life, and hopefully, that happens, and sometimes it doesn't, that it is a life-changing experience, and it never goes away. And I am so inspired all the time by the parents I see using their experiences to help make things better. And that can be in a variety of ways, right? Awareness, advocacy, reaching out to other parents,
Right.
Helping other parents through financial support, starting foundations. There's so many ways to do it. But I think that one of the most frustrating things, again, that we would want people to know is that this simply changes us, and it becomes part of the fiber of who we are. So from my lens, again, family support, we're a caregiver support organization. I think that that's something I would really like people to know. And I'd also, kind of from another perspective, I think that people should know that it's a great opportunity for those outside the cancer community to share with their children, if they have a friend going through cancer, that how to process that, how to become aware, how to help that child, compassion and empathy. Because really, as those children grow up and they can connect to that experience, they're the ones that are going to be taking on this piece, awareness, advocacy, funding. And I know with myself that had a child that went through cancer treatment at school age, friends meant everything. Those are the people that pulled him along in treatment. And as many of us are experiencing now what isolation is like, it's 1,000 times more isolating when you're the only one being isolated, right? So if we can teach our children compassion, that they can help their friend when they need it the most, that there is a great opportunity that the next round, the next generation, will be able to take this thing and make it better for all of us.
Oh, so beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those lenses. I think you are doing amazing things. I'm so glad that I'm so grateful. And you know, I've said too, I wish Momcology would have existed when Connor was going through treatment. So I
Me too. I wish it would existed.
tuned in a little sooner to the not only maybe sabotaging behavior of myself, but just to recognize quicker that what that trajectory was going to look like, and to be able to see people that had done it ahead of me, and it's doable, and it can be less long-term effects. Although, as you said, and it's very true, they won't all go away. It's impossible. It's webbed into our fiber, but there's definitely tools and ways that you can approach that that you wouldn't have known if you wouldn't have had someone to kind of show you the way. And
that's right. And that's where I think that self-awareness plugs back in again.
Yeah.
We can identify, be like, okay, I know what my mind, body, and soul is trying to tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the self-care I can do?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing with us today. And like I mentioned earlier, you can read more about Momcology and self-care tips by visiting the link that'll be in the description. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Again, Kim, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mindy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.